what if I could teach people how to really build their businesses? Then it became, all right, cool. This was amazing because it's just the sum of my experiences, right? I've helped people from an agency build their business. I've seen the back end of so many. I've had this podcast where I've had some of the biggest names on, where I got to really validate and flesh out my own thoughts with some really, really smart people. And then I built my own couple of businesses before. So I was like, cool, I have something that I could help people.
So how do you turn your business into an actual brand? Well, my name is Bijal Patel, and I've had 13 years of corporate experience working at big Fortune 500 companies, and I'm taking all of that juicy firsthand experience and have brought it into my company Launch. Within this podcast, you're going to learn about branding, vision, identity, mindset, and how to scale your business to the next level. So let's go ahead and own your brand. Hey guys, welcome to Own Your Brand. I have a special guest with me, amazing marketer, my friend first, client second. He likes it in that order, Jason Portnoy. So I'm excited to have him on the show. But before I let him introduce himself to you guys, what I want to say about Jason is the thing that amazes me about him is his priority of people over anything else. And so one of the things that impresses me is that he not only says he's relationship focused first, he's like that in his business, he's like that in his friendships, but he's also like that with his wife and kids. And so it gives me great joy to let Jason in on the show. And Jason, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know if I could do better of an intro than that. I think that makes me very proud and happy to hear that. So thank you for those kind words. But yeah, I'm a dad of 3 amazing kids, first and foremost, Ryan, Chloe, and Noah. I'm a husband, and I'm a business owner. So I have an agency where we help businesses grow their business through paid ads and retention marketing. And then I also have a coaching and consulting business called Amplify, which, thanks to your help, we've been able to rebrand and really come across in the way that I wanted to, just couldn't express. And Amplify is really designed to help, grow businesses without sacrificing the things that matter most. Living life around your, building your business around the life you want, not the other way around, and just doing everything on your own terms. And the mission is to make better businesses and humans, because if you could be a business owner that's not so stressed out and not so anxious, not so overwhelmed, then you could probably be more of a present father, husband, spouse, partner, sibling, son, daughter, whatever it is. And then you could probably be a better human because of it. So we've been able to really grow with that as our vision, thanks to you and thanks to your help. But I mean, that's kind of me. That's kind of who I am.
I love that. And that's an extraordinary mission. And we're honored to be alongside it with you to develop, amplify into what you knew in your heart, but you needed to get vocalized. You needed to get it pulled out of you. But you forgot to mention you're also a best-selling author of your book, House of Bricks, which is amazing. I had a chance to review your book, and it's incredible. You're a phenomenal writer. So tell us a bit about the book.
So the book is called House of Bricks, Crafting an Unbreakable E-commerce Empire. Most of our agency clients came from the e-com space, and they just lacked foundations. And then I started to see that happens in almost every single business that I've spoken to. They have problems scaling because they just didn't have the right foundations in place. So taken from the 3 little pigs, what happens when you build a house of straw, house of sticks? They all get blown out pretty easily. What happens when you build a house of bricks? Then you have legacy, you have longevity, you have a durable business. So I wrote the book of years and years in the e-com space of what it takes to build that type of business, and put it out, and fortunate enough to have hit #1 on Amazon in a few categories. And my first book, it's a hard one to write, the first one, but now I have so many ideas for the next one. So we're good.
Very cool. I love that. It's a great read, by the way. So if you guys want to pick that up, it's on Amazon. You can grab that. It takes a lot of courage to write a book. Like what in you knew you were ready to do that? Or did you just do it and then you got ready?
It's funny because we talk about courage, like for in terms of entrepreneurship all the time, right? It takes courage to start your business. It takes courage. For me, it had nothing to do with courage. I don't think of myself as brave or courageous. It was just I wanted to do it, so I did it. I mean, that's pretty much how I've lived my life, marching to the beat of my own drum. I wanted to start a clothing brand, so I started a clothing brand. I wanted to leave the clothing brand and start an agency, so I left the clothing brand and started an agency. I wanted to start a consulting business, start a consulting. I wanted to write a book, I wrote a book. Maybe, like if I started giving it more thought process, I'd probably talk myself out of doing a lot of things. But usually when I want something, it just feels right, it just go, just
You
do.
just go. Yeah. So talk to us about a little bit about that. That's incredible because there's so many people I think who struggle with their own personal brand because it scares them the idea of becoming an author. It scares them on what if the book is a flop, or they may have the other extreme of the fear of success. Like, what if the business becomes a bestseller? Like, am I really who I say I am by the words that I'm writing, or am I an imposter? Or what happens with the fear of failure? Like, what if I anticipate I should be a bestseller, but I'm not? And I remember one of the things that you mentioned is that you're like, yeah, I'm a bestseller, but like, I don't really care. Like, you didn't have a lot of feelings around it. And I wonder if those two things are a bit interconnected for your personal brand and your confidence to be able to put yourself out there and just say, hey, I want to do this next thing. I've never done it before. I have no proof that I have any business doing this. I'm curious to hear what your thinking or your belief system is around that.
I just have no emotion when it comes to business and milestones and whatnot. It's just,
Yeah.
the people talk, oh, your business is your baby. Oh, you hit this. Like, I just want to be successful for my family and be able to support them and give myself, my family, for anyone who's part of my journey with me, the life that I want and the life that they want. So it's all just means to an end. So I've just never been attached. Like I said, that's what enabled me to be able to walk away from businesses, without worrying what other people are going to think. And sure, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I don't really care what anyone thinks. It's anyone who says that is, kind of a psychopath. But I think everyone cares to some extent what people think. I think lately, one of the best thing that's happened to me, and it really took me a long time. So it's not something that came overnight. I think it would probably be in the last year or so, is I just really found my voice and was totally okay no matter what. This is who I am. This is my voice. And there's something amazing when you actually come to that, because then you make posts. You put posts on social media. People like it or don't like it. You don't care. It's your voice. You don't try to tailor it around and make it for someone else. You just speak your own truth. So that's something that literally you hear that spoken about a lot. Just speak your voice, speak your voice, speak your voice. For me, it was a hard thing to find, and you know me for a bit, and you've guided me through a lot of this. You know that it was something that was hard for me. I just couldn't come out with it. I couldn't find where Jason began and all the experience and all the people that were in my head and all the things, like a radio, all the inputs, where did that end and Jason begin? That took me a while. And then when I started tuning everything out, I'm like, okay, this just feels right. This is me. And I'll be vulnerable when I want to be vulnerable, but not for the sake of being vulnerable. I'll put this out because this is what I want to put out. There's something freeing about that.
I love that. Yeah, it's amazing. We call it, you know this, but for our audience, we call it using your empowered voice. And to watch somebody who is a successful multi-serial entrepreneur, and I say successful with that emphasis because there's plenty of people who've got their story of I started, 5 businesses and 4 of them were failures. That wasn't your story at all. You've been successful in every single business adventure and endeavor that you've had. And so to hear somebody who's done this multiple times over and has been a serial successful entrepreneur who still was challenged with like, well, where is my personal brand? Where is my voice? It's a lot more common than you think. And I love that you use that metaphor of a radio because, in those old school analog radios, right? When you're trying to find that like 99.1, but like you're in that in between area, you're hearing 2 frequencies at the same time. And I've noticed with my observation of having helped a lot of people find that empowered voice is we have the voice of our mentors. We have the voice of the people that we're looking up to, that we're quote unquote modeling. We're consuming their content. We have the voice of the books we're reading. We have the voice of the previous version of who we used to be. So we have the voice of our family and our friends and who is in our who's in our network, in our closest environment, the 5 people that you're closest to. And a lot of times those frequencies can get all layered and stacked, and we lose ourselves because we're so busy paying attention to everyone else. And there's a feeling of just almost like you're agnostic to what the audience thinks when you're truly aligned with who you are. So
while overly caring what they think. So it's a rare thing, because the goal of what I put out there is to help people. So if I didn't care about what the audience thought, then I'm just putting out my own voice for the sake of putting out my own voice. But I try to add value. And so you have to do it with some sort of caring in mind, but not letting them dictate what you think is right or wrong. So there's that weird push pull or dichotomy, I guess, of like you care but don't really care, but you really do care.
Yeah. It's in, and that's so, I'm so glad you touched on that, because it's like some people call it the coaching curse. Are you aware of that?
No.
They call it the coach's curse, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it. I don't like the negative slant on it, but I like the fact that it's memorable, the double alliteration and all of that. But they call it the coaching curse because when you care so much, it's that statement in coaching like, you can care but don't want it more than the person wants it for themselves, and that you are not responsible for their outcomes and results, even to the point where if they become a superstar and they're a student of yours or a coachee of yours, you're also not like holding their success to be your own and having little trophies curated of their success being your own. So it's on both ways. Like,
But even that has a dichotomy to it as well, because you can't want it more than the client wants it for themselves. That's like rule number one. I agree with you. But if you're an ethical person, you care about your reputation and you actually want to help people. So yes, you can't assume the responsibility for someone's successes or failures, but at the same time, your reputation's kind of built in this business on people's successes or failures. So there's again that I care, but I can't care, but I do care type of feeling.
absolutely. And I think that they're, instead of looking at things like dichotomies with like the on and off switch, I always visualize a dimmer. And I think most of life is not on or off. It's not either or. It's not A or B. It's not black or white. It's truly on the spectrum. And when you picture the little dimmer switch, nuance is what really adds the flavor, because then it invites the context in to say it is this, but not that. And I would love to hear, like what number of business, by the way, what number of business is Amplify for you?
Third.
Third one. Okay.
Yeah.
What makes Amplify, like, why are you so, I know this, but I want to share it with our audience who's looking to build out their sub brands, or they might be in a state where like right now you've got Amplify, which is your newest business, but you still have JPort Media, which is your media buying business, which is your second business. What about Amplify as your third brand, if you will, and 2 sub brands that are going together that gets you excited and lit up? And how did you know that you should start something like this?
I'll answer the second part first. I knew I wanted to start it because people were coming through the agency and they weren't ready for paid ads, or they weren't ready to start running major traffic to their store. They had a lot of issues and they were looking for paid ads. They were looking at marketing and advertising being this magic wand that they're going to wave over their business, and all of a sudden their business is going to grow to 7-8 figures, and that's going to be the ticket, right? I'll put out a Facebook ad and then I'll make tons of money. But they lacked the foundation. So either they didn't have the support, they couldn't handle the leads, they didn't even know what questions to ask or what success even looked like. So an ethical agency, we turned down a lot of business, and they actually went to other places, and that's where you get the, oh, I've been burnt by agencies before. It's not necessarily that an agency did a bad job. I don't think any agency really goes out with the intention of I'm going to do a bad job for somebody, but sometimes they may take on a client that they may not believe they could help, but they're like, hey, the money's right, or I could give it a go, and they just say, hey, yeah, we'll just take on anyone, and then you get that churn and burn type of agency. So I didn't know what to do with them, and we were spending so much time in strategy versus actually running the ads that it really just didn't make much sense. So I was like, all right, what if I could teach people how to really build their businesses? Then it became, all right, cool. This was amazing because it's just the sum of my experiences, right? I've helped people from an agency build their business. I've seen the back end of so many. I've had this podcast where I've had some of the biggest names on, where I got to really validate and flesh out my own thoughts with some really, really smart people. And then I built my own couple of businesses before. So I was like, cool, I have something that I could help people. And now I'm not involved in the done for you. So I don't assume any responsibility for the work done. It's just really me sitting as an advisor for them. That's my zone of genius. That's great. Cool. I'm happy. So I called it market domination method. It was like, all right, how to dominate your market, how to do all that. And I don't really think that was in line with who I was. And we went on a family vacation. It was our first family vacation in a long time. And it's the first time I really disconnected. Like I was like fully disconnected from work. And I saw my kids' faces light up, and I'm like, this is what it's all about. This I would pay. Like we went to this like breakfast where the characters came, and my wife was like, oh, it's a waste of money. And I'm like, man, I would have paid $15,000, 10,000, whatever it is, to see those faces. So worth it. This is where I want to spend my money. This is what I want. I want these moments. I'm a very nostalgic person. I have a hard time, letting go of the past. Like my daughter just turned 4, and we were looking at baby pictures of her yesterday, and I was like, oh man, like they're growing up too fast. Just slow down. Like I have a hard time letting go, and I was just like, I just want to create as many of these moments as possible. And then that's when I went live in the group, and I'm like, we're switching the whole direction of this. It's no longer about dominating your market, but rather redefining what success looks like to you. And then, you and I kind of work together to flesh out kind of what that looks like and kind of how to rebrand from there. But that's why I got excited, because it takes the sum of my experiences and where I want to go and meshes it all together, and I get to help other people do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. That was such a great moment too. And like, even reflecting now and knowing that Jason I know as a friend first, client second. Jason and I have this joke because I once like said client and friend, and he made me switch the order. So that stuck with me because it's true. But I remember when you told me had you as the intake as a part of our brand 360 process, and I saw market domination method. We already knew that we were going to rename your brand, and that was a part of our services. But when I think about that person now, I'm like, that is so not you. Like, do you know how to dominate a market? Absolutely. And then we came up with the 4M method, which I thought would be awesome if you just spoke a little bit about what is the 4M method and what does that mean?
Sure. It's the 4M's needed to create any type of business or life you want, right? You need the right. I'll say the M's first, and then I'll go into it. Mind, marketing, money, and moments. So you need the mind, which is, do you have the right beliefs in place to actually go the places you want to go? And then do you even have that vision to know where you want to go, right? So that's the mind side of things that everyone overlooks. They just want to get into making money and marketing, but they don't know where they want to go or what they're willing to pay to get there, or do they even have the right beliefs, belief systems in place, right? Because you look at the most successful people. You've interviewed a lot of successful people. I've interviewed a lot of successful people. Talent isn't the main difference maker for them. A lot of people listening to this are way more talented than I am. I thought, like, I've interviewed people where I'm like, I'm more talented in certain areas than them, but the way they thought about things was just completely next level, like just a completely different level. So mind, and then there's marketing, because once you know where you want to go, it's about how do you attract the right type of people, the right message to market fit. How do you get in front of those people? And then you make money, which is sales, profitability, working on that. And then once you do that, you can start buying back what Dan Martell says, buy back your time, which is creating the moments. So how do you free yourself up from your business through systems, automation, delegation, everything that you need to, so you could go and live the life you want, whether that's spending more time with your family, golfing, going on boys trips, whatever it is. That's why you started a business in the first place, for that freedom.
I love that. Yeah. And that was one of the biggest, like, it's so cool because we actually came up with the IP first. I don't know if you remember that. We came up with 4M method first, which, just to recap, it's mind, marketing, money, and moments. When we hit the alignment of that, and it felt like on fire. I just got goosebumps again, saying it again. that was like, okay, that's Jason Portnoy. That is what he's all about. It actually tied back J-Port Media back into the equation. It tied your family into it. It started to make sense with like, this is the through line of everything that you've built in terms of your portfolio of brands. And then we landed on Amplify. And it's just so cool to think about that the word amplify started to make so much more sense of like taking these business owners, helping them amplify their marketing message through like actual media, right? Media buying and like the agency side, but also amplifying their message through who are they as a human? Like, what are the moments that they're creating, not only in their life, but like the moments within their business? And obviously, we know once you get your strategy on lock, when you have coaching, you have your offer right, the sales piece is going to start to come in, and that you had an opportunity now in Amplify to help people and teach them on how you had gotten your mindset elevated through your high powered, high status relationships, which you have plenty of. Like, you're not a name dropper. I'm not a name dropper, which is funny. It's actually funny that we have this in common because neither one of us have done this yet. And I see you're friends with Damon John, and I just see like pictures on. We're both really good friends with Molly Mahoney, and we both have our friend and mentor Taylor Welch, and we have these people in common that we have an actual relationship with. But we are also the same people who don't mention the name. So like, tell us, because I'm not going to do it. Who are the people that you've had the privilege of, working close to or having as mentors or have been on your podcast, so that we can get a sense of like, when you're talking about learning from people at a high level and they're thinking, who are those people?
I mean, I have to start with Damon John, because when I had my clothing brand, he was my first mentor, and we used to meet once a quarter, and we just stayed really close since then. And I don't think I'd be in business right now, in any business, without him. I don't think he told me to start an agency or go where I'm at, but everything is a stepping stone, and you don't know where it's going to take you. But I wouldn't have been on this journey if it wasn't for his guidance. I probably would have quit a long time ago, or made a lot of mistakes and lost a lot of money, and then would have been out. So I have to start with Damon. Gary Vaynerchuk is the reason why I started a podcast. He told me do 20 episodes and he'll come on. He came on, and then from there I was able to leverage his name to get amazing guests. So without Gary, I wouldn't have been able to leverage his name to get like Grant Cardone, Randy Zuckerberg, Rebecca Minkoff, Harley Finkelstein, just some really, really, really smart people and really, really successful people. And then, of course, there's like the Taylor Welch, the Ollie Bilsons, the Ron Lynches of the world, that just, have had major impacts in my life and business. So
I love that. So, and I say that because, like, I know for me,
did I drop enough names there?
I don't know. It's what the people want, dude. I'm just a conduit for that. I'm laughing because I've noticed that we have that actual similarity, because like I've had Dan Martell on the podcast, his wife Renee Warren.
Yeah.
I had Benny Fisher. I just had Garrett Gunderson, Taylor Welch. I've had all these people. And from that, I have people who DM me who ask me, can I introduce them to Dan? And I'm like, absolutely not.
I get that. So Gary's been on the podcast twice. I'm like one of the only podcasts he's been on twice, and I get messages being like, "Hey man, can you send Gary a proposal for me? Or can you see if he'd invest in my brand?" I'm like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So like, why would I do that? And two, no, I'm not friends. It's not like, just, you also have to understand, just because someone comes on a podcast doesn't mean they're your best friend. And you can start doing that. And even if they were my best friend, I probably wouldn't do that, because then they wouldn't be my best friend anymore if I did that for every single person that pitched me. So
exactly. So I think that the point of that though is to say, first of all, this is the point. You're like prepping me for the next part of our conversation. People ask me all the time these type of questions. They don't want to ask me directly, because then they're like, I feel kind of silly asking like, how do you have these close relationships with these people? And I've gotten more bold in my response. Imagine that, Jason. I'm more bold in my response.
You more bold? I don't know.
More bold. I'm more bold because I'm like, I have those relationships because I am that person.
Yep.
You just don't see me yet in that light, but I am 100% that person. I'm at their level, and that's why they're willing to invest in it. And levels don't have to do with revenue. And so I'm curious, And that's why I was laughing. I could see the mirroring in us. We just both leave out all these people's name, which would get us a lot of like notoriety and attention. But I'm not actually interested in that. I'm not interested, besides promoting the podcast and saying what's up, I'm not interested in riding someone else's coattails to build my brand. Like,
Yep.
I have enough confidence in my personal brand and my voice, and apparently enough like caliber and influence in these people's life where they feel like I'm worthy of the companionship. So I'm curious, what do you think? How did you go about getting in front of these high powered people with who have status to their name? And then what caused the relationship to become closer? Like, how did you get into their inner circle?
I'll be honest, I'm not in the inner circle of every single person I've interviewed, right? So
Yeah.
that's number one. No, number two is I ask. Like people are like, how'd you get this person on the podcast? I asked. And it's funny because I started to realize from there, so many people are so worried about the possibility of a no that they don't even go for it. Like they don't even ask. They're so worried about what if this person says no, and they're like, well, what happens if they would have said no, or what happens if they read your message and don't respond? I'm like, all right, cool. Well, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. So for me, I just don't understand the question. Like someone was like, you should do a podcast course on how to get big names on your podcast and how to do it. And I said, do a really short course. Like I literally just ask.
It's a really short course.
Like there's not much to it. Like I wish I could develop that into some IP and secret sauce, but there really isn't. I literally just ask. And then the ones that I do stay in contact with, um, I think you nailed it. I think there's a level of respect. I'm not a fanboy. I'm not there for that. I'm not there for them. I think of myself of having a podcast. I'll say if you're not confident as a business owner, having a podcast is the greatest confidence booster because it's an equalizer. Because when that person across from you is, whether they made $1 billion, $100 million, whatever it is, they're sitting across from you, they're giving you time and you're on equal levels. You have their respect because you're interviewing them. So there's this host, there's authority that you already get baked in where you're already a notch, a small notch that gives it to you. So you borrow off that and like I'm just respectful to people's time and I'm not there to take. I'm trying to find ways to give to those relationships more than I ever take. I think Ryan Dice called it like the relationship deposits. Like you go to a bank, you can't take out money from the bank unless you put deposits in. So my goal right now is like with those type of people is how do I put as many deposits in as possible? So one day, and maybe never, but one day if I do need to make a deposit, I do need to ask for something, I get that back. I'm able to withdraw.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. We're very similar. And I think that's why our energies connect and how we built our friendship is that I believe in like relationships are just like, uh assets and liabilities, or like the analogy you're using of the bank, it's like deposits and withdrawals. And I think oftentimes people are totally unaware of how many withdrawals they're pulling out of the relationship, that the relationship equity is very tilted. And I think a lot of times people make the mistake, especially I've seen in a mentor setting, where they just pull and pull and pull from the mentor, but they're like never to be found when it's time to make the deposit in. And I think it's important in all avenues. Like, we have clients, obviously, we have a business, but also I tell my team all the time, I'm like, who is the client we are being? And we're not perfect by any means at all whatsoever. And I'm aware that our team is not perfect by any means, but we do address things. We do hold people accountable. We do have conversations about it because it's in those gaps that I have the opportunity to train to say, hey, when we're the client and the client's team messes up with us, what's your reaction back to them? Because I want you to be aware that if you are hands off with it, then you're also kind of showing that you don't care because you're just being deferential and you're being passive. But if you like go beat up our vendors because they didn't do XYZ exactly like they said it, are you ready to get beat up when our clients lose it on you? And so it's so important, that the golden rule or the platinum rule, it's like, just let's stick with the golden rule. You're treating people the way that you would like to be treated.
The
And
law of
that
the mirror.
The law of the mirror. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm curious, like, as you're building out these two brands, you've got team, you're like a leader, you've got your, it was really cool. I've actually never asked someone about their high level relationships because people always ask me that question as if it's like, the first thing I tell them is that I'm never gunning to have the relationship. And that's exactly why I get it. No matter what room I'm in, I end up getting the relationship because I'm never gunning for it. I'm never angling for it. And I think people feel the innocence of that, of like, I'm not looking for it and I'm not going to use their name as like a badge of valor or like trophy because I'm not seeking
Clout.
their status and their clout. I'm not borrowing it from them. And I think that they can sense the difference. So it's kind of cool to have that exchange with you because we have that value system in common, but we never talk about it
Yeah.
because we don't really value that. But with where you're at right now in your business, you obviously have the media buying side, right? And the marketing side. And that is a tough game to play in, especially after iOS 14. I know you say the real marketers are still standing and they just adapted and pivoted. And now you're on the coaching side, but you know, you've got team, you have clients, like you're building your own personal brand amongst the business brands. How do you think about it from the perspective of where do you want your personal brand or amplify to go? Like what does your vision look like? Because you've been around the bigger brands, you've been around the bigger people. Like where is Jason going next and where's Amplify going next?
It's a great question. I don't think my answer is going to be nearly as good as the question. I don't really think about it. Like everything that's kind of happened kind of just happened and kind of plays out. And
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, for certain things like my personal brand, for the longest time I never posted anything about my family. Nothing about my wife, nothing about my kids. I just never did anything about that. And then, you know, someone asked me, like, you're posting a lot about your kids. What made you change? And I'm like, it just felt right. I just felt I wanted to post about my kids. So it was like a feeling. It felt like it was the right time. And, you know, now there's such an important part of my life that like maybe when I was so focused on work took over most of it. And now like family is just more important. So I feel it would feel
Unauthentic. Yeah, you got it.
unauthentic or not.
Yep.
What's the opposite of authentic? But post unauthentic to post, like to not post about my family because there's such an important part of it. So I don't really have a direction
Mhm.
because, like I said, I'm never married to the business. I love helping people. I think Amplify is the first business
Mm.
that I sat there and I said, okay, this is the legacy business. An agency you can move and sell. You could acquire new. You could grow it. You could sell it. You could shut it down. The clothing brand, I hated every moment of it. Amplify is the first thing that I'm like, okay, cool. I could actually make major differences in people's lives because I don't just control or I don't just have an impact in their business. I have an impact in the way they think, and I have an impact in changing their thought process that can make them a better human in life. That's a you know you know this, so it's not going to sound
Mhm.
cliche to you, but to everyone listening, when you write a mission statement, when you're going through that process, everything sounds cliche. Oh, we help make better businesses and
Yeah.
humans. Great. Everything sounds like that. But there's something amazing that happens when you truly believe it, like when you actually really believe it. Um, and sometimes that comes across to people. Sometimes it's like, oh, it sounds like a line. But I can tell you with certainty that was a line that took a long time to write. You know that. It took a long time to figure out what that was for something to hit. And I think there's a lot of events that happened over the past year in my life that kind of just really that kind of hit home. So I think where am I taking Amplify? Where am I taking the personal brand? Day by day. I mean, just the goal right now is to add as much value as possible to the world, and do my
Yeah.
part in
I
making
love
making
that.
people a
It's
little bit
like
better and bettering
the
myself
best
through the
answer is
process. So
always the real answer. And I'll say this, like I do get the sense that you are very intuitively led. I don't know if you noticed that, but like you definitely you have a level of knowingness and faith about what you're speaking, and there's a certainty in what you're saying, because I feel like you, again, with the serial entrepreneur, your third business in, all of which were successful, is you trust yourself and your being that you're going to know what to do and where you're being led. And I love that. And a lot of people are working so hard to get to that level of knowingness. But
I think it's very easy. There's a hack to that. It's very easy. I look at every situation and sit there and say, in 5 years from now, will this have mattered? Will this decision have mattered? Yes, no. If no, then I tend to do it. Like, can this cause a hiccup? So there's like, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And can I live with that worst case scenario? If the answer is good on all fronts, we just move. But people are just so afraid to make the mistake. They're afraid to go to like get hurt or fail. So you said every business was successful. True, but not true. Like the clothing brand started, I burnt through the money, lost out, had to go take another job, and then I just redid it smart. Like I was like, okay, I'm an idiot. I did it wrong. This is not the way you could do it. I could have done this a lot better. I half-assed my way through it. I could do it a bit better. And then it became successful. The agency, right? We just started in paid ads. We grew to another thing. A market domination method was an attempt. We hit a certain level. It was profitable. It was making money. And then Amplify came over. So it's the willingness of like, okay, I'm going to listen and I'm going to pivot and go do. So there's no failing unless you completely just give up and stop. And I think that was the hardest part for me when I was going to stop the clothing business. I was like so worried. People are going to say I failed. There's going to be no way people are going to assume you just shut down a business when things are going well. They're going to assume you failed. But it doesn't really matter. So I don't know if I'm so intuitively in touch that I can make the right decisions versus if it doesn't matter, just make the decision. If you fall flat on your face, just pick up and go. If you have a choice to go right or left and you don't know which way to go, the worst thing you could do is just stand exactly where you are. Go left, figure out halfway through that it's the wrong way, turn around, and then go right. And I think that's the problem with most business owners. They just stay at that fork in the road and they're like, oh, left, right.
Yeah,
left,
I love
right,
that.
left,
I think
right, and then
that's
you watch everyone go.
what you're
Pass
sharing is that treasure trove of thinking that you've adapted for yourself on the ability to make a decision, because a lot of times it's fear that stalls people out. But again, like we were talking about, that like operating with courage, and you're not even really even processing that you're doing that because it's become a habit. Courage has become a habit for you. And this is what I notice when I'm talking to somebody who has the right who's in their network. It doesn't matter. The who's, by the way, don't have to be a fancy name. You don't have to be best friends with Gary Vee or Dan Martell to be like an important who. That's silly, by the way. That is
which I'm happy you just said. Sorry to interrupt you, but there was something you said about like you don't go into those rooms for those people. Sometimes the best connection in those rooms for you are other
totally
people in the room,
and
I
say that
when
in any mastermind community I'm in, any event I go to, I'm like 50% or less is the leader, the guru, the other people on stage that are putting on the event or hosting it. The other 50% is the community that's there. And so getting aligned, finding your community, finding your peer group, but the who's that you have in your life is going to shape your thinking. And when your thinking gets shaped, your thinking, the thoughts that you have 1,000 times over is what starts to become your beliefs. And when you have the same beliefs 1,000 times over, that becomes your identity. And so like these pieces are all connected together, and that's the be in be do have. And I think a lot of times people are so excited about a big name, not because of the name. They think it's because of the name. They think it's because that personal brand, but it's really that person's energy, their confidence, and their ability to ship, quote unquote, ship their work. Like in The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, that book is fire, by the way. Do you have the ability to ship your work and say, done, let's go, move? Yep. And everyone says, hey, I want the confidence. Hey, I I want the energy level. No, you want the self-doubt to go away. You want the insecurity to get turned down in volume so that you can operate with these things in place. And I think that the who's in your life that you allow in those voices are a big difference maker between, like, are you continuing to falsify and amplify negative beliefs, or are you amplifying positive and useful beliefs? And that's what I'm hearing from you, Jason, is that a lot of your thinking to me seems very clear and lucid and coherent, and like, hey, if I don't need it, if it's not useful, I'm just willing to let it go, and I'm not willing to beat myself up over something that doesn't work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have my moments though where I let the intellect strangle me at times, like everyone else, and just like overthink certain things. I'm human, just like everyone else. But yeah, I
Yep.
mean, I don't think the doubt.
So when
You
it
said it
comes to
perfectly. I don't think
marketing,
the
I'm
doubt ever
curious
goes
about
away. You
this
just have to learn to
because
tune
this
it
is something
down.
I know that I have been challenged by, and I work on it actively. So, like, obviously, there's all kinds of marketing. There's paid marketing, there's organic marketing using your personal brand, there's strategic partnerships, there's cold. I mean, there's like all kinds of different ways, JV, affiliates, speaking from stages. There's a lot of different ways to market yourself. When you think about marketing, I know because we're teaching people own your brand. So we have a lot of people who are looking to build up their personal brand, use social media, use content to really get their offers out to the world so they can start to convert people. What would you say to people who, either from the organic or the paid perspective, they put something out there, a piece of content, or they launch something and it doesn't hit or it doesn't convert in the way that they want it to? What do you say to people who are business owners and founders who are putting themselves out in the line and they all feel that wish of like pain or rejection when the marketing doesn't work? Yep.
Oh yeah, it's a total blow to the ego, right? You think you're putting out something great, you put it out there, and then crickets. Um, Look, there are times where I put something out there and it's like flat. Like an hour later, I looked, it's like flat. And so there have been times where I've just deleted it because like I was like, I'm not leaving this out there, right? I'm not gonna pretend I'm
Yeah.
better than anyone else. Um, I've
Mhm.
deleted it and then I post it at a different time and it hits. So sometimes it's just a timing thing. So you want to test to make sure that's not just like random time. You put it out there, just didn't hit, didn't really work. And there are times where I literally post the same thing a week later and it blows up again, right? Like or 6 months later, I recycle content and go through it, and it blows up. Sometimes with an ad, we just change the thumbnail, and all of a sudden it does a lot better. So there's all these little different things you could do. So I wouldn't necessarily just sit there and say your idea sucks. Try to think of a new idea, but play around, make sure those things
Mm.
are in play. When it comes to ads, you just have to be realistic. 9 out of 10 ads are going to fail. That's the truth, and that's why Gary says just put out content. Gary Vaynerchuk, just put out content. Like anytime I try to tailor the content to where I had a mentor who was like, stop putting out content for the sake of content, put out content for you. And I said, I don't care what other people think. And he said, okay, great. Write something, put a timer on for 5 minutes. No matter where you're at in those 5 minutes, if you didn't finish it or
Mm.
not, you post it. And I was like, well, what if it's not finished? Like, who cares? It's for you. You get to flesh out your thought later, but you're not putting it for anyone. It's a hard exercise.
Right.
Not many people are willing to do that because then all of a sudden you start realizing that you actually do care what people think. So, so one is just make sure that you're staying true to your own voice, and it will never be bad content. It just may not the other. There's sometimes, Bijal, you know this. How many times have people been following you on social media and be like, "Oh, I'm such a huge fan of everything you put out there. Your content's so good. I'd love to
Yes.
like chat with you." And you're like, "Man, you've never liked any one of my
Hmm.
posts ever.
Hmm.
You've never commented on any of my posts." Most people are lurkers. That's the truth. Most people are consuming your content and they're just not liking, they're just not commenting because that's not them. I'm not a commenter, I'm not a liker either. So I have to be understanding the fact that some people are like that too. But if I think I'm delivering value and I feel
I love
compelled to
that.
use my voice in a certain area, I'm going to use it, and it doesn't matter if it falls flat or not. Um, but back to the paid ads side, 9 out of 10 ads are going to fail. So it's a quantity game more than a quality game. The market is the one who decides whether the quality is good, not some guy in a room or some girl in a room who gets to say, I don't like this color. The market gets to decide. 9 out of 10 ads fail, and that's why we keep testing. And that's why, marketing is a fancy word for testing. We put out content, and the one that hits, we scale it, and then we test the rest. 9 are going to fall off. That ad, we scale that one, and it just keeps going and going. You just have to be realistic about the results. We're inundated with so much noise on social media, so many posts.
Yep.
Like it's almost you went from insecure because I don't think people are going to like it to massive ego that everyone should be paying attention to me. It's kind of like a weird, like you went from a complete, 180 switch of like, I don't want to put this out there because people are not going to like it. Then you put it out there and you're like, oh, no one likes it. I hate it. But really, you're just saying, man, how come people aren't listening to me?
I've noticed that for me, having tried both, that the paid I feel a little bit less emotional about, because the people who comment on your ads are absolute idiots. Literal absolute idiot buffoons of like the lowest, the most like decrepit people on the planet are the ones who like hate on you in ads. So that I've been better about. The parts that I've had to really work through is when your organic market either doesn't hit and doesn't say anything, or they're hating. And then that's been a much, because it feels a lot more personal when it's something that's organic. It feels awesome when it hits, but it can also feel a lot more personal because it is literally your personal brand. And people get confused with like, is it me? Or is it the representation? And we always teach people, even your personal brand, even Jason Portnoy, even Bijal Patel, the version of you that you see of us on Instagram or on Facebook, that is a curated version of us. It's not us as a human being. So that is a curated version of us. It's not us as a human being. So
And you also have to repel in marketing, right? Like you have to put out stuff that people are going to hate on, because the ones that hate on it are really raising their hand saying, I'll never work with you. I don't vibe with this. And you're like, cool, thank you. Yep. Please move aside and let me get closer to the people who raise their hand and identify with you.
As another question that I'm excited to ask you specifically, as you being a marketing maven or maverick, marketing maverick, is like, what do you say now that you've gone through our branding process, Brandfluencer? What would you say as somebody who has so much marketing wisdom, knowledge, genius? What is the difference between marketing and branding, and how would you describe that?
I think people are really have a misrepresentation of branding. They think it's the colors or the logos and whatnot. I think branding precedes the marketing part, because if you have your brand dialed in, and I say brand, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, you're the branding maven or maverick, but I see brand as really getting in tune with who you are and what you stand for, and just everything about the brand. Sure, a logo is a derivative of it. Sure, colors are derivative of it, but you can't, like, those things don't really matter if you don't have a voice and a spot in the marketplace of knowing who you're going after. So I see brand as that. Once you have that, marketing becomes so much easier. I think where people fail from a marketing side is, one, they don't know their definition of success, or two, they just don't know who they are and what the right message is. And they try to tailor that message to an audience that they don't even know that they're going after. So many times I see a brand and they're like, oh, this is our audience. And I'm like, no, it is not your audience. Like, they're overwhelmingly telling you it's not their audience. And they don't go through the branding exercise of being like, okay, well, who is our real audience? Who do we want to serve? Who are we going after? That's really good. I think there's a ton of wasted ad spend because people don't have that dialed in.
I have my own viewpoint on what branding versus marketing is. And I think of branding as long-term, marketing as short-term. And I think they're both required. Like, when I think of marketing, I think of like campaigns, marketing campaigns, advertisements, like the direct response marketing, like pulling out from emails, asking for the offer. And I think of branding as like, what is the feelings and what's the representation of like, this is who the market is going to and viewing as the authority. So it's like one, I like in the framework of be, do, have, which our listeners should be familiar with that construct. I think of branding as the be and marketing as the do, and they're both required to interplay together so that you can have what you want to have.
Yeah, I think maybe a good way to look at it is like
Ooh,
branding is kind of like the product and the package, and the marketing is the distribution of it.
yes.
Like that's that you put it out there to the
I like
world
that.
through
That's
marketing
so
and
good.
advertising.
Well, Jason,
But you
it
got
was
to have something to put out
amazing
there to the
to have
world, and
you
that's where
on
branding comes
the
in.
show. I'm going to ask you to tell us about what is the next thing that you're super excited about that our audience should be following you. We'll be dropping Jason's links in this podcast show notes, but what is the next project or thing that you're super pumped about?
So we're launching two things. We're doing our first in-person event in August. So I'm really excited about that. And then number two is we have a mastermind group, which is pretty much what Amplify is all about. But we're also launching an inner circle, which is for people who, maybe not be ready. They may not be at the place to invest in a mastermind, but I want to help as many people as possible. So it's really to get you started, get you rolling, get you going. And what comes with the community still comes with me, comes with a lot of the perks of mastermind at a
That's
fraction
so
of
amazing.
the
And what
cost.
are
That's
your
called Inner
dates for
Circle,
your
and
event in
that's
August
launching
and
in the next
where
couple of weeks. So really excited about that.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Well, we'll drop in the links that we can. Make
August
sure to
7th and 8th
follow
in
Jason.
Newark, New Jersey.
His posts are fire, but he's an amazing friend in person. And I'm telling you, go check out House of Bricks. It's an awesome read, and you'll know the difference between someone who's actually playing the role out in their human DNA versus someone who's just talking about what marketing may be. So, Jason, thank you so much.